o'clock. Is everybody ready? 7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the flag pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any discussion on the agenda?
Motion to approve it.
Louis moved to approve the agenda and
Second.
Kelly seconded it. All in, any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passed. The minutes, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes?
To approve the minutes.
Okay, Jordan moved to approve and Lynn seconded it. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passed. Old business. Docket PC 021722-02. Eric, you want to get up and fill us in, please?
Good evening. Yeah, if you recall, in February, we did have a public hearing and it was tabled due to concerns and questions about the new type of modulars that they were going to use on the site. We did get some amended application materials. Mainly now they propose to go to the conventional solar setup first, the tall kind of high-rise tilting units. They also came up with a revegetation plan that's slightly different, that bolsters all sides around the perimeter of the proposal, and a revised site plan. So those should be in your packet. They also did an amended narrative that explains the changes at this point in time. I believe we did hold a public hearing and it was closed and then tabled. So staff's recommendation would be to remove it from the table and to have another public hearing if it's your desire. We do have a PowerPoint presentation where we amended it to show those slides, and we did add some pictures in a quick video if that's your pleasure to see that too at this point. So I believe the consultant is also here, so you can get clarification from the representative from Novell Energy also on this. So with that, I guess if it's your choice, I'll go ahead and just click through the PowerPoint presentation.
I'll make a motion to remove it from the table.
Okay, Steve made the motion to remove from the table and Mike seconded it. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. It passed.
Okay, this request, property owners are Michael and Nicole Matus, and the solar company involved is Novell Energy to allow 1 megawatt, according to chapter 12.3 of the zoning ordinance.
All right, I'm not clicking. Go ahead.
Okay, this is a aerial image. It's in Pleasant Hill Township in section 2. It sits just north of I-90 and just south of County Highway 12, just outside of Ridgeway. Next slide. Okay, these are some rough pictures from early February. The one on the right is looking eastward along County Road 12. The solar would be kind of in the area in I-90. You can see very right of that. This is looking, the one on the left is looking kind of in the southeasterly view. Next slide. 2 more pictures. It might. So Oh, well. Well, all of a sudden, there they are. It is in the staff report, in the mapping exhibit, it borders the Bush Cemetery. The Bush Cemetery is positioned on the west side, northwest side of the solar project. And these are a couple pictures from the edge of the cemetery, just looking into the Matus property, showing approximately where the solar field would be. Okay, okay, that worked. There's the entire acreage. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think
That's what it looks like at midnight.
that's right.
A new moon.
On operation.
I don't know.
Go back.
Okay, the site in which they would use of the 12.39 is roughly 8.5 acres. It's currently in hay ground or cropland. There is nearest neighbors of 300 feet to the northwest and 300 feet to the north and 1,600 feet to the west. County Road 12 requires, I believe, 130-foot setback. I think that's, shouldn't say 65. The setback off of County Road 12 is 130 feet. And that's what their site plan has been amended to show as well. It's considered a high probability for sinkholes of this part of the county. The I-90 corridor typically is, and it's just showing roughly, where there is known sinkhole features. Next slide. This exhibit is from Amanda from the Soil and Water, who also did a kind of a review as far as the erosion, and also the Winona County Planning Department is required to do a Wetland Conservation Act determination. This was in response to the materials they submitted. Based on these features, they're labeled points of interest. There's some trees and some drainage patterns and some settling areas that would warrant further, I think, investigation on behalf of Novell. So in response to their wetland application on March 4th, I did get back to them saying that the first delineation wasn't adequate. And these are some points that we'd want further information on as far as vegetation and soils and hydrology to make sure that there is technically no wetlands that would be impacted with the solar. So that is left as a requirement on behalf of half of the proposers there. Next slide. Again, the screening and planting along the perimeter, and then the conditions would require the applicants to submit information for review by the planning department as requirements prior to issuing a development certificate. They'd have to submit a decommissioning plan, minimum of 50,000 financial surety, cash escrow preferred as conditions. Erosion control, they have submitted their preliminary SWIP, and that would be up for final approval through MPCA, SWCD, and county prior to breaking ground. And then, as I mentioned, I touched on the wetland delineation report and the status of where they're at with that. Next slide. This is the amended site plan that now shows the traditional rows and configurations of solar panels, and then screening around the entire perimeter of that. You can see that the cemetery areas in the northwest corner. You can see there's a neighboring house kind of to the northeast, and then there is a dwelling located almost direct or due north from the site, and then I-90 borders the site on the south. Next slide. Novell Energies submitted a preliminary landscape plan in the perimeter, which will be reviewed by SWCD and county prior to issuing the development certificate. Screenings proposed now on the northeast, south side of the project. Evergreens need to comprise of at least 2 species. Size and spacing must follow the performance standards that we have prescribed in chapter 9.15C of the zoning ordinance. Next slide. Again, this would be kind of showing their landscaping and their species and specifications as far as the revegetation plan that they have, and that should have been in your kind of amended packet there too. Project soil was a class 3E, a seat and silt loam. E designates that it can be considered highly erodible. So there's some steeper slopes, as you've seen in the pictures, and you look towards the south, you can project 6 to 12% slopes on that. So there is a concern, of a disturbed area, and not implementing proper erosion control could lead to some concerns on the site. This was evaluated as a conditional use permit, even though a specific date or event of termination, it was generalized on the application that it is a temporary, being 25 to 30, but not a specific date that we could identify. So at this point, the analysis and findings have been prepared as that as a conditional use permit. Next slide. This is just a overview. This is kind of standing from the Bush Cemetery, kind of in that north east corner, and I'm now panning the outskirts of the cemetery, just kind of showing what's straight south with I-90, and you can see the grade change. And maybe that's all we got. Well, it's kind of choppy. Now this is looking all the way back to the west. Kind of panning back to the north now, County Road 12. Now looking back, be zooming in, looking back to the east, kind of seeing that there's some corn and some hay ground. There's some drainage, ravines that dissect the parcel. I think that's probably pretty good. The application was reviewed and considered by Pleasant Hill back in January by the township, and the chair, Ronald Frick, indicated that the township board had no comments in regards to this request. Staff consider all the testimony and materials before making findings for the criteria that support the planning commission's decision. The decision is to recommend approval. Staff has included 16 conditions to go along. Next slide. And with that, I'll take any questions or turn it over to the consultant.
Louis,
Yes, we've had a lot of these sites talking about and that they have a limited to the time. What is the reconsideration if these people would want to replace the solar cells and go to another generation of production on these lots that we've done?
I mean, on the site, say
Well,
in the
not
25, 30
This
years.
is this site, but generally any ones. With what new technology is coming, these solar cells could become more highly efficient. They seem to be doubling, if not tripling, every several years in capabilities. And what I'm saying is, in the end of 20 years or whatever, they would want to replace them with different cells, solar cells. Now, do they have to come back here for that replacement
It
procedure?
depends on the scope, size, capacity. I think if they're using the same footprint, but it says it's been billed and advertised as a 1 megawatt. So if your question is all of a sudden technology makes it a 3.5 megawatt on the same footprint, I think we'd try to figure that out, whether or not that would warrant a revised application.
Well, I think if it increases to 3.5 megawatts on that same site,
Yeah.
I think the power company would have something to say for the amount of juice coming off of it to
Yeah.
get into the grid.
Yeah, there's language in the ordinance that says an intensification of a conditional use permit, that the change in conditions or something that changes or increases that. that's usually a standard ground to say, well, you think maybe we should amend this conditional use permit, go over what the changes are. So there is language in the books today to do that.
And then there is the possibility that it could be extended for
Oh, yeah.
another lease term for another 25 years beyond
Certainly.
the end of that.
Yep, certainly.
Okay.
Any other questions for him?
I had a question, Eric. You mentioned the soils are highly erodible. Does the stormwater plan effectively look at that aspect of the
Yes, I think they look at the surface area, they look at what would be impervious, they would look at a little bit of the watershed and hydrology data to see, they try to fictitiously create what they call a 10-year or 10-inch rain event to see how much material approves. And obviously you want to try to plan for stormwater and retention, and those are the things that they typically would make sure that they got. It's really crucial during ground disturbance to make sure that proper measures are in place just to protect it from that crucial time when ground is exposed and bare. But there's probably also, I think, some long-term provisions that they're required to do with their SWIP. Anytime you have over an acre, that's when it's almost a state and federal prerequisite to incorporate that. So
Thank you.
I have a question. They revised this for the county here. They added, totally changed their plan. Did they take this back to the township? Or does the township still have all of the original information?
the township would have had the original information, so they didn't change the location of where they're going, but they changed the module and the type of system back to a conventional system, and they enhanced the screening that they're going to do. But no, I don't believe they gave that back to the township to weigh in on it.
Well, that's, I guess, just a question. Is that important that the township be updated? Because now they're gonna have information that, they're gonna build it and they're gonna go, that's not what we were told you were building, and
Right.
or is that a question for the applicant?
Yeah, I'd ask.
Okay.
You could ask.
Thank you. Any other
Scott.
questions for Eric? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Petitioner, would the petitioner like to come up and tell us what we want to do? And
Well, again, I'm Scott Temple with Novel Energy, 2303 Wycliffe, St. Paul, Minnesota. And here to answer any questions. I can talk a little bit about about your question, Mr. Riemann, on the length of the term. So we get the 25-year lease term from the warranty of the panels. Our panels are all guaranteed to be producing at least 80% of their nameplate capacity for 25 years. So they're under warranty. If they break, they get replaced by the manufacturer. That's where we come up with that 25-year period. We put a 5-year extension on it because after 25 years, it's still producing 80% of the power. Like it was mentioned, for us, we have an interconnection agreement with the utility. Our system is based on that. Who knows what's going to happen 20 years from now? We know that technology is going to increase. Efficiency is already increasing.
Well, I don't want to sit here to argue, but what I just recently read an article where they used tin seleniate, and a professor used a laser method to reorient the molecule, and they would be able to get electricity out of heat generation in this. And I would think that application would work well in the bottom layer of the solar cells for additional generation of electricity. It depends how fast they could get this technology so it's commercialized. But it sounds something quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we intend, like you saw with the dual axis trackers, we're trying to keep up with the technology and use the most efficient things on the market. And we will continue to do that on our new projects. But these ones that are already built, they're built as a project or financial model for for that length of term. You know, they're producing the power, with no real incentive to mess with them. You know, like I said, if 20 years, who knows what could happen? We may, you know, the utility may upgrade and say, yeah, we can take more capacity, and that would be great to be able to intensify the energy production on existing sites. I think that would be a good thing. It's not in our model. It'll probably be what happens when all these CUPs start running out. But I think we're real limited. I've had those same questions myself about, hey, can we come back in and, you know, put 1,000-watt panels on them? You know, we're limited to one megawatt of peak production. So we can't do that under our agreements. We can't increase the capacity. We can increase the efficiency, like I said, with the dual axis trackers, where we're making a megawatt for longer during the day. But even to do that, we would need to come back for another CUP.
So does your contract with the landowner and your interconnection agreement, do those both go for 30 years, or are they longer than that?
The lease term is 25 with a 5-year extension. And
Okay.
that's based on that interconnection agreement that we get.
Okay.
And then, so it's fair to assume that this is a more traditional system, no cement footings. These are just driven steel supports of some sort.
Yep. This is the pile driven racking system.
Okay.
A single axis, so they're on long axes, north and south, and they follow the sun, east and west.
Any other questions, Leah?
Kind of more a comment, Mr. Temple. It was hard to read this because it felt like a lot of review. You know, the first 200 pages was review of last month, but I did notice under the Novel Kronebusch solar legal description that there was an addition under point 3.
That's
That's the other
that's
one.
the
That's the
next
next
one.
one.
No.
Yeah, the
Kronebusch is the
Kronebusch
next
one is the
project.
other docket item.
Oh, okay. Same
Hold-
guy,
hold that thought, I
same
guess.
guy.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
I guess I have a question. It's what I asked Garrick, you know, it's not about the township and the local authorities. If you change the, you know, I guess, I don't know, is that important to let the township know when you're not building what you told them you were going to
Mhm.
build, or?
I'm
If it's
going
not that
back to
important.
the township on Monday, and I will definitely give them copies of the new plans. We have to run back past the Kronebusch's project too. So we had these 3 projects, went to talk to the Pleasant Hills about all of them. And at that point, we were still thinking we'd build under the existing CUP for the Kronebusch project. And they're like, "Oh, we're going to build that? Great. You know, we're fine with it." And they were okay with the dual access. So I'm not anticipating any pushback in doing to something that's even less visible. But if they do have comments, we'll certainly bring that to attention before the board meeting.
No, I mean, I just think it's good to keep your local authorities. I mean,
Mhm.
someone built one in our township, they built it differently than all the information we have. So I'm real familiar with somebody telling you they're going to build this and then don't.
Mhm.
So, and it's not real pleasing.
Right. Yeah, we'll make sure they get the updated plans.
Any other questions for him?
Did you have any new information regarding grid capacity for us?
No, I mean, I got the cap screen showing that we have capacity. That's really all it shows.
All righty, thank you. No other questions? Okay, what are the wants here? Do we want to open a public hearing again? Do we want to say we already had the public hearing? What are the wishes?
I think we should open a public hearing again, because it's a different plan.
Is that a motion?
I'll make an emotion. to open a
Second.
public hearing.
Okay, Mike made the motion and Kelly, I believe, seconded it to open the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passed. Public hearing is now open. If anyone wishes to speak for or against the petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you'd like to say. Okay,
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Alex Poliat. I'm the field director for the Minnesota Land of Liberty Coalition. My address is 244 4th Street East, St. Paul, Minnesota 55101. I come before as an organization, as the field director of an organization that looks at these projects as a property rights issue. We come at these issues from property rights, securing economic for their families. This is a kitchen table conversation with families. I mean, when the applicant comes up here, you say the applicant. Novell is speaking on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is the farmer and landowner who have decided at their table that this is best for my family, for our future, and this is why we're going to decide to utilize our land that we see fit. And it's a good for everyone else because we believe in Minnesota. We also believe that we have a beautiful state. And we have the ability to do these kind of projects. So for us, what it comes down to is we really want to focus that in is that this is a decision from the landowner themselves to help, to utilize their land as they see fit. And that's how we come across these projects. And we're happy to hear the change with the move away from the dual track and back onto the single track. It, allows the land to be restored and regenerated, and be brought back to where it was beforehand. So this project aligns with a lot of what we believe, and we like to see what it move forward. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
if anyone else would like to speak for or against a petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you would like to say. Stephanie, are you monitoring the interweb? Kay is on vacation. She's still there, but she's on vacation. So if there's nobody on there,
I do not see anyone online that is not a county employee or elected.
okay. There's Kay smiling away.
Or press.
Oh, press. Okay. Third and final time, if anyone wishes to speak for or against a petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you would like to say.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Steve made the motion and Louis seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? It passed. Public hearing is now closed. Okay, what are your wishes, folks?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adopt the findings of fact and conditions prepared by staff and recommend to the board for approval.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Kelly made the motion and Mike seconded it to approve, including all the findings of fact and conditions. Discussion, please.
I can support it the way it is.
Okay. Anybody? Okay, call the vote. All in favor of approval of this one? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passed. Okay, the next, it gets final approval at the county board meeting Tuesday, April 12th at 9 a.m. That's when it will come in front of the county board. Okay. Next petition, docket PC 03-17-22-1. Lou, would you like to come up and fill us in on the Andy Cronabush petition? Andy and Cindy.
Page 220.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to try this clicker a couple times and then we'll abandon it and let Stephanie advance slides. But you want to bring that up? Okay. Great. Always love the technology in this room for some reason. As was stated, the CUP request is from Andrew and Cynthia Cronabush. partnering with Novel Energy Solutions to allow a 1 megawatt large-scale solar energy system in the ARC zoning district. Request is pursuant to Chapter 12.3 of the Winona County zoning ordinance. Next slide. The location is essentially in the village of Ridgeway. It's right just to the north of I think is it the dog patch saloon there, or
No.
Honey Saloon?
is it
No.
what's it called now?
Shed now.
The Shed.
All my saloons.
There was a time, I'm sure. Pleasant Hill Township, Section 8. Access is from County Road 12 up Haas Road to the north, which is a dead-end road in the middle of Ridgeway. Next slide. This map shows a little bit zoomed in map with the solar energy system, the leased boundary, and some of the parcels in Ridgeway there that you can see, the surrounding land. The petitioner has, this is the first of two, so we expect another one to be coming for a future conditional use permit. This is also in the same location as a previous 5 megawatt project, which I'll show you a map of in a minute and explain that a little bit more. It's the parcel is 54 acres, connects to that XL Energy grid as all of these have been, most of them. You can see it's in cropped farmland there, and those are class 2 and 3 soils. Next slide. This slide is showing the setbacks of some of the from the project to some of the dwellings in the area. So the nearest neighbor is directly to the south and is 300, just about 300 feet, maybe just a little bit over that to the dwelling to the leased boundary area. There's another 350 feet to the fence of the project itself. Not another 350 feet, another 50 feet, making it 350 feet to the actual fence, and then the panels are just beyond that. So just to give an idea of the distances. Some of the neighboring dwellings there I pulled out are 700 feet on each side, and then it gets further away from there across the street to the south and to the east and the west. So just to give an idea of separation distances. Next slide. This slide shows a photo site plan from the applicants, showing the layout of the panels and how they're arranged, showing the access off of Haas Drive or Haas Road. The fence is proposed to be a 6-foot tall fence. Modules are 14 feet in total height at full tilt. Slopes on the site range from 2% in the north and west to a little bit steeper slope up to maybe about 12% in the southeast. There will be, as with all these, a SWIP, erosion control plan will be required. Vegetation management plan, pollinator friendly perennial vegetation is proposed, as with most of our solar energy systems, and decommissioning surety is at $50,000 is what's in the conditions. Next slide. This is the previous approved 5 megawatt solar energy system that was proposed and approved back in 2015. There's a number of differences between them, not just the size, but the access is from County Road 12. A lot of different requirements at that time, and then the 1 megawatt system plus the next one would make the future 2 systems. So you've got a letter in front of you that's. We had been talking with Andy and and the, and Novell, about, what to do with these. One option was to amend the 5 megawatt previous conditional use permit and go forward with the next two. That was going to be a little bit awkward just because there were going to be two projects. All the ones that we've done up to this point, they've all had their own conditional use permit. So, you know, we've co-located on sites. There's the one in, yeah, on County Road 1, for example. That's 3 megawatts. They each have their own conditional use permit. Same property owner, but they had different companies that were involved. And so as they came up, we just approved and looked at separate conditional use permits. This one, if we amended it, we'd amend it from a 5 megawatt to a 1 megawatt, and then we have to amend it again to add a second project, like entire project. That would be then a second megawatt. We just ended up deciding that it was better to look at these all as independent projects. And so we have a conditional use permit before you tonight for a 1 megawatt project. We are expecting another project in the future for a second 1 megawatt project. And we had talked to Andy, since they do share the same footprint. So this project is wholly encompassed within that 5 megawatt footprint. It's actually located in the, no point here for you, but this project is down in this. It's down in this kind of location here. This is what's being proposed today.
Mark, can I interrupt just a second? You're a little bit wrong on this. This is the very original first plan that was presented when we started the project. And then through the conditioning process, this was all moved back 750 feet from the center of the road. So the one that was actually approved started approximately right here with this line, and this was all eliminated.
Okay.
Just to make sure you guys got all the information correct.
Okay.
It's the one that was approved was 750 feet from the center line of the road to here, and then it went back.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, this map was the only one I could find that was readily available to show the footprint from that project. But so I guess that's the route we're going to go. And Andy is, just to clean up the record, he has agreed to relinquish the original one. So we'll remove that from the books, and we'll have a clean record that just shows this project and then the future project when that comes along, if that's approved. So to give the background on that. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions on that specifically? Go ahead, Lynn.
It sounds like pushing out the boundaries. It sounds like there'd be a greater distance to the houses.
Yeah.
Than what was originally.
Yeah, because when this was one of the first ones that came through, and there was a lot of public comment as part of that. It was a large project, and there was what a lot of the public comment was that it was so close to some of the homes, and so through that process, there was negotiating, as there often is, and the project, as Andy stated, was actually, the site plan was changed, and they moved it back to 300 feet. And then subsequently after that, we looked at adopting new ordinance requirements for solar energy systems and ended up actually adopting a 300-foot setback as a standard.
Okay. Well, Cronabush, the legal description from Novell says 1,000 feet from residences, and you said 700. So the packet as presented's got some discrepancy.
Right, that's not correct. What's being proposed for this is what I showed on the previous slide. Nope, 300 feet to the lease boundary, 350 feet to the fence. So it would meet our setback distance, but yeah, it's not 1,000 feet away. Any other questions on this before we move forward through the rest of the slides? Okay, next slide. With all of these, there is a landscape screening, a pollinator plan. Next slide will show the actual, what they've submitted thus far, but screening is proposed along the west side of the project boundary. As always, there'll be a mixture of vegetation and tree styles and types. And size and spacing must follow top end of the standards included in our ordinance. It'll be reviewed by county staff and SWC staff as usual. Next slide. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the green circles on the to the west. That's what they have submitted preliminarily. We usually review these in detail with the development certificate. And I would imagine potentially having some of that screening extended around the south boundary possibly too. But if obviously if the planning commission has comments or preferences on that, we'd love to hear about it tonight as well. As far as just like location, we get into species type and, you know, and that type of thing with our review. Just to point that out.
Yeah. So why are you more concerned about screening the west side than the south side?
Well, the west side was along the public road right away. And so that's usually what we're screening, but we're also usually thinking about neighboring dwellings. So in this case, you know, the public right of way is on the west, but all the dwellings are to the south. Which is why I could foresee, you know, requiring that along the south boundary as well. There's only one farmstead along Haas Drive to the north. It's to the north and west, but it's still public right away. So
Is that the
Lynn?
way the soil slopes too for significant rainfall or erosion?
I believe the slopes come from the northwest to the southeast. And then there's a draw, and Andy, you can correct me when you get a chance up here, but I think the draw actually takes the water to the north. Is that correct?
Actually, it runs to the, I don't know if you can see, I can come up here and show you better.
Yeah, go ahead.
This all kind of slopes down this way, and then it runs down this way, and then it gets down here, and then it runs to the north. So this one is all pasture. Right now it's been vacant, and we did put a pond in down in here, so if there's any amount of, you know, sediment runoff or whatever, it'll be stopped on our property. We did that pond. We when they rebuilt County Road 12, they needed to get rid of dirt, and they actually hauled it down there just to get rid of it. So we utilized it and put a pond in. So.
All right. Any other questions?
I just have one question. Is it 5 megawatts that requires state approval?
I believe it's, I think it's like 20 megawatts. Scott, do you know what that threshold is for state permits? 2025? I thought it was 20 or 25, and that's for EAW?
Tracking utility scale.
Yeah.
10, 20, 50.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a bit larger.
I can tell you there was no state approval that I.
5 megawatt.
Current permit.
Okay. And I don't recall this one. But
It's a while ago.
did I hear you mention that there was a lot of concern by neighbors?
There were, and in 2015, there was a good turnout at a meeting like this.
Okay. And nobody seems to be concerned about it now. You didn't receive any additional comments? right?
None, no.
I can explain that if you just want the information. I know I'm not supposed to be speaking, but I'm trying to be helpful. That map that Lou had up there where I said that it was so close to the building site, that was their concern. And that's why the agreement was to move it back to 750 feet.
And well, I was part of that at that time, and it was 5 times larger. So
Right.
it's 5 times larger right in the back.
And
So-
and it
so
was
this
new.
probably seems like a better alternative to that community. One,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, let's go on to the next slide. Pleasant Hill Township, has not had a chance to hear this. The petitioners had planned to get to Pleasant Hill Township on Monday night, and the township has changed their meeting date. So last month it was the third Monday or Tuesday of the month. Now it's the third, no, it was the third Tuesday of the month. Now it's the third Monday of the month. And so the third Monday is actually next Monday. So they weren't able to get there in time for this. I think that the township has is aware of it, and they have been in support of these in the past, as was mentioned in the previous petition. The plan is for the petitioners to get there next week and to get us that signed township acknowledgement form before it goes to the county board. That's in keeping with how we've handled them in the past. If it's important to you, though, you are well within your rights to table this request till next month if you wish to hear from the township before making a decision.
we can just add a condition, right?
Can add that as a condition, absolutely.
That has to have that approval.
Yep. And if, if they have concerns, the township has concerns or wants to talk about it some more or, is not in support of it, we can have them come back to the planning commission. So, next slide. This will be reviewed under the 7 standard CUP criteria. And then an additional 3 for the large scale solar energy systems. Staff review, it appeared to meet the criteria, and our recommendation is for approval. Next slide. As always, consider all testimony and materials before making findings for the criteria that support your decision. If the decision is to recommend approval, we have included 16 conditions for consideration, maybe an extra one and make it 17. Next slide. I believe that's it. Any further questions for me at this time before we hear from the petitioners? All right, thank you.
Okay, would the petitioner like to come up and speak, please? Name and address, please.
Andy Cronebush, 36468 Cedar Ridge Drive. Lou did touch on quite a bit I was going to speak about, but just what I came for was, as some of you guys know, some of you were on when I did receive a 5 megawatt, 25 acre permit. For some reason, the developer, who I always thought was XL Energy through Solarstone, was doing it, and they pulled the project. So now I've been active in getting somebody else to take and use the conditional use permit. But because of this one being smaller, both in acres and output, the county decided to just basically abandon the original one and go for a new one. I have talked to K Quality about relinquishing the original one after I'm done with the second phase, like Lou was saying, because I currently have one for 25 acres. We're looking at putting in 2 12-acre sites. The other thing is, I like to be open with everybody. I am the chairman of the Winona County Soil and Water. I talked to Kay about that, of conflict of interest. She felt that Amanda Gentry, who does do the review of this, would do a fair assessment. If anybody has concerns about that, then I would just request that you go to a neighboring county soil and water district and have them do the overlay, the water stuff. One thing I did say, and Steve, I don't know if you'll even remember this, there was a lot of concern about stray voltage from the last one. And at that time, there was, might still be, I don't know. There was a telephone wire that ran under the property, just short of the north fence of the neighbors, that 320-foot site. I guaranteed Steve at the time that I would take my backhoe out there and dig it up if it wasn't in use. So after that meeting, I spent almost a day. I was talking to people in 3 different countries in 4 different states, and I can't tell you if that line is still in use. So I've never done anything with that line. Again, stray voltage is going to be tested prior to and after. So if there is a problem, we'll have to find if that line is even active. It's an old Northwestern Bell line, so I have no idea. So again, that's about all I got. I'll turn it over to the novel consultant. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Andy while he's up there? No? Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Hello, I'm Scott Temple with Novel Energy Solutions, 2303 Wycliffe, St. Paul, Minnesota. Here to answer any questions.
Anybody?
We'll wait until you sit down.
Yeah, we'll wait.
I move to open the public hearing.
Kelly moves to open the public hearing and Lynn seconds it. All in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passed. The public hearing is now open. If anyone wishes to speak for or against the petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you'd like to say.
Hello again, Alex Poliat, Field Director, Minnesota Land and Liberty Coalition, 244 4th Street East, St. Paul, Minnesota, 55101. Again, this is, it's a very simple thing. You heard the petitioner himself actually coming in and talking about this is what's best for him and his family and deciding for himself what would be works for him. And we just always want to decide that people have these rights in America to make those decisions for themselves that help their families. So that's where I have to say today. This one, thank you.
Anyone wishes to speak for or against this petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you'd like to say. You
Andy
look
Crum.
familiar.
36468 Cedars Ridge Drive, Winona. I just forgot when I was up here earlier that I did attend the Township annual meeting last week, and the notices all for the meeting or for this has all been sent out, and there wasn't even a word spoken at the Township meeting. So I haven't seen or heard of any opposition. So thank you.
Well, the county also put out all the notices to all the neighbors, correct? So
Yeah.
they would have all got the notices from the county, yeah, as well, so.
Yeah. So I thought that there
anyone-
would have been some at the annual meeting, and like I say, it was never even brought up.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie, anything happening on the world of the web? Okay. For the third and final time, if anyone wishes to speak for or against the petition, please step forward, state your name and address and what you'd like to say.
Move to close the public hearing.
Jordan moved to close the public hearing and Mike seconded it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Yeah,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I move that we adopt the findings of fact as prepared by staff, but that we add one condition and we modify one condition. The condition I'd like to modify is number 3 regarding landscaping. And I would just modify the 3rd line in that. After vegetated screening, I would add the words on the south and west boundaries. And that's it. Just so we've got that, the part that faces the houses screened. And then that's all I would add to that, number 3, and I would add condition number 17, that our recommendation is contingent on having no objections by the township.
Second that motion.
Acknowledgement form was completed.
Chair,
Yes.
I would also note that there's a Scrivener's error in number 16 that references prior.
So I'm just curious, do we need a completed township acknowledgement form to move ahead, or do we need them to approve?
Yeah, do they need either no comments or approve? Or what are your wishes, or what are your words of wisdom?
I'd say either no comments or no objections, because some of the townships, and I've talked to a fair share of township officers, they almost have a philosophy that they don't want to advocate for one or unless they have problems. So they are by default selecting no comments on a lot of the ones that we do get back. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would consider that a friendly amendment, and so I would say,
I do think that's covered by the no objection. So either in favor or no comment would not be considered an objection. An objection would be if they said anything against the project.
and I would just add contingent upon receiving a township form which does not list objections. Something like that.
And is that to be received prior to the county board meeting?
Yes, it is.
And it's the township acknowledgement form, not a. It's only one township involved.
Well, a form,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Now I want Stephanie to explain what we just discussed.
We have a second? Was there a second?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Kelly made the motion, Jordan seconded.
So what was just discussed is that a township form must be received prior to the county board meeting, and provided that that form indicates either no comment or support for the project, then it would proceed to the county board meeting with the recommendation for approval from this group.
And the screening on number 3, south of the
Correct.
south
South and west. screening.
and west screening. Correct?
Mr. Chair, Lou, it was west, right? The current plan is west. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't making a mistake there. West and south, yes.
Andy?
The township road ends at the property line. Do you want the screening going even on his private land road or at the, where the property line, where the road ends? Just a clarification for now.
Is that your farm back there? That's not your farm, right?
No, but the
No.
property ends. The farm ends, you know, when you see the brook along the road, there's that square.
Yep.
Why don't I pull the map?
Where the driveway come off for the solar panels?
Yep.
That's where the road ends.
Understand that, but it's still not your land that goes out. It's not
Right.
your farm on the end.
And I was just
Right.
trying to clarify that, being that the road ends right here.
Yep.
This
But
is-
it's still not your,
Right.
that's not your property.
No.
No.
Just,
So it is basically not public, but it's someone else's,
it's somebody else's private driveway.
it's someone else's
That's all I
private
was pointing
driveway.
out is the township road does not go all the way back here.
Right.
It ends right here.
Right.
So I don't know if it makes any difference.
I mean, it made a difference. If it was your driveway, then we could say, well, if you don't want screening there, then you don't need screening there, but it's someone else's driveway.
Right here's the end of the Hass Road.
Mhm.
From here on, it's all private driveway.
Okay, but this is all your land, all the red. is
Right,
your
yeah,
land.
On the
that's
east
my,
side of the
I own all this here.
Okay,
So I'll just,
And this is north.
north is this way.
north is that
So
way,
would there
south
be-
is here.
This is the
there-
west side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there would be space for vegetation.
Yeah, they have that all in the
Yeah.
plan. But I was just curious if you needed a vegetation along the
But-
private driveway. That was all.
They had
That's
no
what-
West
screening.
side,
Yeah,
Well.
Yeah.
that's up to you guys. I'm just saying that this is where the public go.
okay.
Will give me this
Yep.
one.
We didn't have the whole west boundary, so it
Right.
should be fine.
You gave me that, right? Or who did?
No, I don't know. who
Uh,
did it.
Eric did.
Oh, okay. You got a lot of them, Andrew.
I got that.
Okay, so we're cool.
So we're cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. And this is just for two amendments, right?
No, this is
For
for,
the whole
the
kit
whole
and
thing.
caboodle.
yeah.
Okay, is there any more discussion then? All right. Would you care to, oh, you already reread it. Okay, the motion is to change it to put the, you go ahead and read it. 3 on the,
It would be to modify condition number 3 to include that vegetative screening beyond the south and west boundaries. And to add a condition 17 regarding the requirement that the recommendation is contingent upon receiving a township form which does not list objections prior to the county board meeting.
thank you. And basically to pass it. No other discussion? Okay, the motion, all in favor of the changes and passage of this thing, say aye.
I,
Opposed? It passed. Your next thing is Tuesday, April 12th at 9 a.m. at the county board meeting. And of course, you gotta go talk to your township people before then. I would like, before that one guy leaves, this is my perspective of life. Do you know what the average size farm is in Winona County? The 200 acres, 150, 200 acres?
Well, we got so many parcels, it's hard.
But
Dependent
farms, you know. So far, I guarantee we have lost at least one farm in Winona County to solar. One farmer to solar. It's a different way of looking at it, but of all the acres we have taken out of agriculture production and put into solar, and that's why I didn't say anything till afterwards, because it's farming your land, but it's not producing food. So if you think your food bills are gonna get higher, you're probably pretty much correct. But we've basically eliminated one farmer from the county, an average size farm so far, just in solar production. So I understand it's a different way of looking at it, and I don't wanna dispute anyone that would like to make money on their property in a legal way, but it's definitely someday, that's all I'll say.
Lions found out that they turned around.
Yep. Okay, zoning ordinance updates, preliminary discussions.
Nice to get up and move for a second here.
Go.
Yeah.
Let blood circulate.
All right, I will try to make this short, so, because I know we had a lengthy meeting last time. There's a couple of things that are coming up on the radar, and we wanted to get some input from you guys before we actually moved forward. So just a reminder for we have a list of some ordinance amendments that we've been given either by the county board or things that have come up from our discussions here. So some of the things that have come up as issues, some of the things that we've talked about needing to clarify, we're hoping to be able to start tackling some of those and bring you some proposed language to address those issues. Just to remind you on how it works, we're just going to have initial discussions today. Just talk about what you guys want to see. We'll come back with some potential draft language, mostly like working sessions for a while, try to get some things in place, and we're not actually going to vote or discuss actually approving language until we have a package to do so. because it's cleaner that way, but we're doing working sessions till then so that we can don't have to do it all at once. Because once we initiate a zoning ordinance amendment, we're on a timeline. So we're trying to avoid the timeline at this point and at least just have some discussion and figure out where we're going to go. The first two that we'd like to get feedback from you on are a CUP, IUP variance relinquishment process. And that one's pretty timely given the discussion that we had tonight about the fact that we have a CUP to be relinquished. We don't actually have a process for that. We've been winging it. We did have one last year. If I remember correctly, and Megan, I think you're on, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the small business that was in like a storage container thing. That one, they came back and said, changed our minds, we don't want to do this, and relinquished it. We kind of made up the process as we went with that. But given that we're now on our second relinquishment in a year, we thought it would be appropriate to talk about a process to do it formally, make sure it gets recorded appropriately, and make sure that the property record is clear with what can and can't be done on that property. There were a couple of things that have been discussed as far as components of any zoning ordinance. And one of them, that's my preference, is a written request to the planning department signed by all property owners. And that component is because A, we want it in writing so we can put it in a file. And B, it needs to be signed by all property owners because we've had issues where one property owner is getting a divorce from another property owner and one of them starts making decisions on a property. We've actually seen that come into play. So we want to make sure it's signed by all owners and not just one of them. That it will be effective upon recording. So they can submit it to us, and at any point before it actually goes to the recorder's office, they can always say, oh, wait, just kidding. I really want to keep it. So it gives them a little bit of a cooling off period if they need that. We discussed that recording fees would be covered by the Planning and Environmental Services Department. So if you choose to let your conditional use or interim use permit go or your variance go, you're not going to have to pay those fees associated. And that we would then provide notice of the termination to the Planning Commission so that you guys would know what was going on with the permits that were issued, and the county board would be notified as well. So those are some of the things we were thinking. I don't know what your input would be on that, or if there's anything else that you think would be necessary as far as relinquishment, or your thoughts on even having relinquishment in the ordinance.
Lynn?
Clarification, you talk really fast, Stephanie.
Sorry.
When you were talking about no fee, are they getting a refund or there's no fee to relinquish?
So in order to record a document with the recorder's office, I think it's $46.
It's $46.
There's a $46 fee to record a document. We're going to cover that so the person relinquishing the permit doesn't have to.
Because they paid the $46 to record it in the first place, and so we're going to help them with relinquishing it, kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
And otherwise, it might discourage them from helping clean the books up.
Right.
They'd just be like, well, yeah.
And it's probably worth the $46 to not have to worry about that permit ever again.
It sounds like you covered all the bases, you know, as far as it getting in the books and everyone knowing, everyone up and up.
We tried. We wanted to make sure it's a simple and clean process, and that they don't have to come back and ask you guys if they can do it, because that's a waste of everybody's time. If that's what the landowner wants to do, then that's what they should be allowed to do. So we did also have some discussion, and this might be something for you guys too, about whether or not relinquishing a permit can be a condition of getting a new one. That's another option that we can look into. So for instance, we had the Corona Bush one today where we could have had a condition 18 that the prior 5 megawatt must be relinquished prior to construction of the project to, again, help clean up the books.
I thought of that one on this one, but it's on the same footprint.
Right.
So you can't have, if it would have been a separate footprint, then I would have insisted upon it. But because it's the same area,
Yep, we're kind of we're doing a lot of cleanup, both with this ordinance amendment proposal and then also with the Corona Bush property. We're trying to clean up the record and make sure it's going to be the assuming that the second one also gets approved, the 1 megawatts, not the 5 megawatt, and keep our records clean.
Yeah, it could be a data nightmare if you're got an old file and introduce a new.
And I heard Andy's, his statement was he's willing to relinquish after this is all approved.
The second one is approved.
Yes, yeah, right, after the second. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense from the applicant's standpoint. Yeah. Mhm.
And the
We could-
county's juggling 2 files to
Yeah,
keep separate.
We could add that as a condition on the second one.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, if he hasn't done it already by that point.
So you're just bringing this to us tonight. We wouldn't be, no vote on this until it comes back as a package, is what you're saying?
Yep. Well, so we'll have a discussion tonight, preliminary. If you have any feedback, we'll take that into consideration. We're going to meet next week and start working through some of the ordinance amendment stuff. So if you don't have anything else on that, we can talk about what we did and then bring you some draft language next month as a working session on some draft language, and we can discuss any revisions at that point.
So how does the county staff feel about the record, the original one staying in the record until another one supersedes it? Is there any opinion about?
The problem is it doesn't supersede, because a conditional use permit or a variance runs with the land forever. So unless you give it up or terminate that prior one, it's always there, even if there's another one on top of it.
Oh.
So that's what we want to clean up, is if there's a reason to let that first one go, then we want to make sure that we can do that and have the next one in place that would be more appropriate.
Like, well, I was thinking of the time continuum. If he doesn't relinquish until the other 2 are established.
It's not a condition at this point. He can do the 1 megawatt. Well, assuming it gets approved at the county board, he'd be able to do the 1 megawatt. He still has the 5 if he can get somebody to actually do that project. So he'd be able to do that 5. It still encompasses the one that you discussed tonight, though, because it's the same footprint.
Okay, I don't want to get bogged down talking, excuse me. Are you done?
Fine, I'm
Okay.
done.
I want to get bogged down talking about this particular one, but we have it in writing that he's requested termination of that CUP. So that's not an issue in this
Right.
particular.
Yeah, I wouldn't
case.
worry about the Corona Bush CUPs at this point.
Okay.
So it's just it makes it a timely discussion. The fact that that was on your agenda tonight
Yep.
helps aid in what we're trying to do with
Okay.
this.
Gotcha.
Okay. Anything else on that one? Cool. I like to start off with easy ones where we're actually mostly in agreement on things. The other one that we wanted to get your feedback on, and this one we don't have a lot of thoughts to bring to you. It's more that I want your thoughts. So was it last month or it was January where I was here addressing the issues we had with our definitions on businesses within our zoning ordinance. So we had the home occupations, we had the temporary small businesses that nobody in the room liked the word temporary, but it met some criteria. We had agribusiness. There's some other things within our zoning ordinance. So what I'd like to get from you tonight is what kind of distinctions do you want to see? Are there reasons to distinguish between types of businesses, particularly within the ARC? That's where we tend to see it and where it pops up a lot. So what do we want to continue? The home occupation, which is confined within basically the footprint of the home, no signage, those conditions, and then have the agribusiness, which I think we need to clean up our definition a little bit there, and then have a separate form of small business, get rid of the word temporary, and have some special parameters that go with that about signage, parking, complying with ADA, those kinds of things. That's one way that we could do it. If there are other distinctions that you think are appropriate, we can do those. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on distinguishing businesses and any conditions that should apply to various types within the ARC. I know that's a really broad topic. That's why it's a preliminary discussion.
I'm trying to think of how the feds, the IRS determines a small business. Isn't it an amount of sales? Isn't it a monetary sort of value?
I know, and Eric, I don't have my zoning ordinance with me. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. We actually have ours separated. No, The temporary small business is the one, because wasn't it up to, it was a certain number of employees, but it was able to have, and the property owner has to be one of them. Let's see, we got it in here somewhere.
Yeah, because insurance benefits, all that is affected by whether or not you have a certain number of employees.
Let's see.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think we even define temporary.
Yep. Said temporary small businesses shall employ no more than 12 full-time people on the premises or the equivalent of 12 full-time people exclusive of household members. The owner of the property must reside on the property and be employed in the temporary small business. The owner of the property and the owner of the temporary small business must be the same individual. Those are our current requirements for temporary small business, along with the review every 5 years. That's what's chapter 9.13.
Stephanie, it's Kay. Just one quick comment. In some places, a temporary business is something that, sets up to sell patio furniture and flags around the 4th of July. And so from the past meeting, the word temporary, even though, technically speaking, perhaps no business goes on forever, but that was one of the words that I thought was, perhaps making the decision makers more uncomfortable. So that was a quick comment. Thank you.
I was just going to comment too about temporary. I think we're displaced on how we are using the word temporary. I think temporary is the circus coming to town and leaving.
Yes.
I don't think of the permit to allow somebody to make hubcaps and whatever they're making it in an area, it should be defined as temporary. Even if they have to renew it every 5 years. I think we're just using that word temporary wrong. We have the same argument with interim
Yep.
as well, so.
Yeah, we went round and round with that temporary, and then we had that discussion here. So that's why we wanted to bring this back to you, mostly while it was fresh in your minds, to talk about distinctions. So, I mean, that leads us to the possibility of 4 different classes: home occupation, temporary business for the things that Kay just described, which is pop-ups, small business, which would be a permanent establishment, and the agribusiness, which has that agricultural orientation.
These requests are coming from staff.
It's based on the discussions and the issue that we ran into back in January, and the fact that our ordinance definitions aren't clear, and they don't make it easy to allow these things on properties, and we'd like to be able to allow these things on properties without having to argue semantics. So if we can address what those definitions are and make sure that what we want to allow is incorporated within those, it'll make approving these a lot easier going forward.
This is Kay again. So what we're trying to avoid is trying to shoehorn, a business into something that's not quite the right fit definition-wise, when it's a perfectly normal business that's providing a useful service to rural residents, either goods and products that they need, or like Mike's example, with some kind of repair or something. And right now we're kind of shoehorning things in.
So this only,
Right.
so this only applies to rural and not city?
Correct.
It's only in the ARC, right?
It's technically throughout our zoning ordinance, but I don't know that I've seen any of these in anything but the ARC. So that's kind of what we think of when we're trying to set these definitions.
I guess to avoid shoehorning things into our definitions, would it make sense to kind of look at some other counties and see what kind of businesses they've got? So we don't just add this one small business and then we find another business that's wanting to start that doesn't really fit that, but probably would be something that we'd allow. So maybe just see what's out there, and we could maybe have more choices so we wouldn't have to shoehorn.
Absolutely. We can do that. We've done it with solar. We've done it with a lot of different things before, when the planning commission and later the county board wanted to kind of compare some either sample language or how it's being handled elsewhere. And we'd certainly be happy to do that.
We're in January, but I don't have any concerns about bringing this.
Well, you've got different classes of business, and we're looking in the agri. One could be construed to be manufacturing, would be one area to look at. You can sell it down into a service area, which would be a repair shop. There are a sub-level that you can work on that type of level into businesses. If that is a plausible or amendable.
We can look into that too and see what,
Because the service would be if someone's giving a haircut at it, or a repair shop would be service. You could service and then put that, make an outline of what it is. You can have a manufacturing base, the service and a manufacturing. You could have a welding shop that they make stuff to it, and as well as fix it. That's a manufacturing and service at the same time. That's what you're trying to get to. And then you got your home craft stuff.
that's actually very useful. That's for people that would, sit at home making jams and jellies that they sell outside of the home. I actually have a home occupation permit for a photography business because I was doing photography stuff out of my house. No signage, nothing else, but being able to actually do business within there. It's really helpful for a wide variety of things. It's a home occupation, an occupation you engage in within your home.
Yeah.
And with the internet, there could be big expansions on that. Anything for me that becomes more inclusive and hopefully less restrictive.
Well, I think we have to be very careful not to stifle people's creativity on how things evolve. Like we talked about internet, things just change. And if we get too cloned into specifically everything falls into some definition, I think it's gonna be very hard to move forward.
And that's why the zoning ordinance is a living document. We can amend and revise to meet the current needs and desires of the county. So it's not an overly cumbersome process to make those modifications to get it to where we need it to be.
Well, there's two other categories you could use other than miscellaneous.
Always good ones.
We're happy to do that research and come back with some additional language that can then be modified as the planning commission sees fit.
Any other questions, comments? All right, we do have a list of other ones. We're going to start doing this on a regular basis, probably at all of our meetings. If there aren't any petitions, we probably won't. We're not going to make you come in just to deal with these, but we're going to keep working on zoning ordinances to try to get some of those things cleaned up and addressed that have been raised by the county board, the planning commission, or just cleanups. I am going to, just so everybody knows, I am going to clean up all of the Oxford commas within the document because they drive me crazy. The fact that there's no Oxford commas. So that's a Scrivener's fix. There's case law out there that says
to get rid of them.
right. No, there's case law out there that made or break, or that found against a county because there was no Oxford comma. So they found that the last two items in the list, instead of it being blank, comma, and blank, that second and third ones, they were combined into one and said, nope, didn't meet it. You owe this much unemployment and all that. So they're important. So we're gonna fix those.
So was there any progress made with the solar discussion?
That's being worked on behind the scenes. We should have some thoughts to you one of these future meetings.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Yep. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Okay, Board of Adjustment didn't meet. Okay, County Board.
Yeah, at our last meeting, we approved the Randy and Valerie Breyer CUP for their solar application.
That was it. Okay. Anything else that needs to be brought forth at this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. Jordan made the motion and Mike seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Bang.